Class is uneventful, and after the final bell rings, I find myself alone with Muto. So, it looks like we've all assembled for the second meeting of the Science Club. Or is it the first? What do you think? Should we count yesterday as a meeting? Well, we did form the club yesterday, didn't we? That seems like club business, so we can safely call yesterday a meeting. Muto smiles in his usual stilted and awkward way. I wonder if the muscles in his face are just not shaped correctly to let him smile naturally. You really do have a knack for this, I think. Logical thought processes, that is. I guess so. A scientist speaks with authority, Hisao. The answer here is yes, I do. When the world wants to know how it works, we tell it, even if all we've got is a decent hypothesis. But we must sound certain anyway, because we're the authorities on the subject, right? He chuckles to go along with his awkward smile at this awkward joke. I'm doing my best not to grimace, but I don't think I'm being too successful. That's entirely false, of course. We know a lot, sure, but nobody's an expert on how the world works, if only because nobody can be sure. With no certainty, there are no experts. But we like to pretend sometimes. There's some things we can be certain of, right? Yes, but no. We know gravity's there, for example. To illustrate, Muto picks up a pencil and drops it. See? Still there. But it's good to check every once in a while. That's why you'll still see researchers mucking about with gravity. We're pretty sure we know how it works, but there's always a chance that something isn't how we think it is. So you check and check and check. That's science in a nutshell, Hisao. The whole time I've listened, feeling rather spellbound. Muto seems to really be passionate about this stuff. I think. It's hard to tell sometimes. How the world works, how humans work, how the universe works. All these questions to be answered. And depending on what I go into, maybe I could even figure out a way to fix my heart. That said, I don't think that's a real priority for me. Besides, as we start discussing the book he gave me yesterday, I find myself more and more interested in that than my heart condition. I mean, I kinda hope he branches into engineering, and then at the end of the game, everybody who is missing a limb gets cool robot parts. Replace his heart with a robot heart. I'm mostly projecting, because I would absolutely jump at the chance to replace my body with a killer robot body. Besides, as we start discussing the book he gave me yesterday, I find myself more and more interested in that than my heart condition. Before we even realize it, an hour's gone by. Well, let's call this meeting over for now, okay? We'll have another meeting, tomorrow or the day after. He considers this for a moment. Call it the day after, I've got a lot of grading to do. Okay, see you then. As I exit the classroom, I realize that I don't really have anything to do tonight. Emmy and I didn't make plans, so I guess I'll go to the library. It beats doing homework in my room anyway. The library always seems cooler than the rest of the building. Probably to keep the books from getting damaged by excessive heat and humidity. Books are sturdy objects, but if you want to keep them in good condition, it takes a little effort. I've got several books that are so well worn the pages are barely clinging to the spine. It seems impossible for them to still be usable, but if you handle them with care. I make my way to the main desk, where I spot Yuko busying herself with something or another. She smiles at me as I enter and waves. Hello, Hisao. Good to see you again. What are you looking for this time? Nothing in particular, I guess. I just didn't really feel like going back to my room is all. Yuko nods. Well, if you're unoccupied, maybe you could help me look for something? Sure, what do you need? Yuko brings a finger to her lips and looks around furtively. She seems to be looking for eavesdroppers. Come closer. I take a few hesitant steps forward while feeling distinctly unnerved. Yuko lowers her voice to a confidential whisper. I'm on the trail of the Yamaku cat burglar. The what? Shh, the walls have ears, Hisao. Or they might. But listen, those missing books, remember them? Yeah? Well, they weren't missing. They were stolen. I'm convinced of it. I remember you saying something of the sort earlier, but how do you know? Yuko leans in closer and, if possible, whispers even lower. Because I found one of his hiding places. You did what? Yuko looks triumphant. Found one of his stashes. It was under one of the stairwells in the boys' dorm. 3 books I've been looking for. All 3. I'd suspected a thief before, but this proves it. So, did you take back the books? Yuko looks as if I've just suggested she walk around naked. Are you nuts? He can't know I'm on to him. He might go ground and evade capture. Uh-huh, so what do you need my help with then? Yuko casts another glance around the library and leans in closer. You've got to spy for me. Spy? Yeah, like when you're in the dorms, you know? Keep an eye out for suspicious activity. What constitutes suspicious activity? I mean, Kenji's a pretty suspicious dude, but I'll wager he barely goes to class, much less sneaks into the library to pilfer books. I wouldn't be so sure about that. I think it is Kenji. Still, what's the harm in saying yes? At least it'll get me out of this weird conversation. Yeah, I can do that. No problem. Yuko straightens up and claps excitedly. Great! Now hurry up and talk about something else in case someone comes in. How's the school treating you? Pretty well, actually. I've been running in the mornings with Emi Ibarazaki, right? Yeah. How'd you know? I served you two in the tea house, remember? I deduced that if you were going to run with anyone, it would probably be her. She looks pleased with herself. Impressive. Anyway, yes, we've been running in the mornings. And, we kinda started dating. Yuko claps her hands together excitedly. Really, that's great. I bet you two are great together. I love seeing people find one another like that, you know? I even thought to myself when you walked into the Shanghai that one time, I wonder if this kid will wind up with one of those girls. Really? Yuko doesn't seem to notice my somewhat weirded out tone and nods affirmatively. Yup, I could tell that you'd wind up with one of them, you know? I've got an eye for that sort of thing. Of course. Her expression droops slightly. I'm not so good at it myself. Oh, I'm sure that's not true. Oh, it's true. I met this guy once. We got along really great, but it turned out he was younger than me. And that was kind of weird, but not terribly so. What was really weird was that he disappeared one day and I've not seen him since then. Huh. That does seem kind of odd. Doesn't it? I hope it wasn't something I did. I feel compelled to reassure her. I'm sure it wasn't. I intend to try to calm her down further, but the both of us jump in surprise at the ringing suddenly coming from my pocket. Yuko sighs to steady herself as I pull the phone from my pocket. I still feel a little sheepish for indirectly causing the incident. Emi, what's up? Oh, thank God, I haven't called your phone before, so I didn't know if this number would work or whether you would pick up, and I can't. Whoa there, Emi, slow down. What's wrong? There's a pause on the other side of the line, during which I can hear Emi trying to control her breathing in order to calm down. Something's got her terribly agitated, and it's starting to agitate me. Can you stop by, like now, or shortly after now? I really, really need to talk to you. There's a tone of pleading in the last sentence that I don't think I've ever heard from her. Of course, I'll be right there. Hold steady, okay? In my increasingly agitated state, I've apparently started saying things that don't quite make sense. Okay, I'll be okay. See you soon. I press the button to end the call before slipping the phone back into my pocket, apologize to Yuko before running off, and run off. Perhaps at some point I would have stopped to think about the time or how suspicious it looks for a guy to enter the girl's dorm at this hour. Except right now I'm just concerned with getting to Emi and finding out what's wrong and how I can help her. I knock on the door and I'm greeted with a subdued, "Come in." Something is very wrong as I stare at the scene before me. Emi's there, yes, but she's in a wheelchair. And her legs are missing. I glance around the room and see them sitting in the corner, looking like they've been thrown there. Emi responds to my entrance with a lopsided grin that is both pleased to see me and completely, utterly heartbroken. Hi, Hisao. It looks like she's been crying, but if she was, she's stopped now. I notice that I'm a little out of breath, having taken the stairs 2 at a time in order to get here. My heart doesn't seem to mind the strain, though. I file this happy fact away for later consideration, like when I'm not staring somewhat dumbstruck at my girlfriend in a wheelchair. Realizing I've still not responded to her greeting, my brain lurches into gear. Emi, what happened? Guess I should have listened to you, Hisao. My leg's got a nasty infection. I'm not allowed to run on it for at least a couple of weeks. She gives a bitter laugh that shouldn't be coming from her. I can't even walk on it. I could have used a crutch and kept one of my legs, but I didn't see the point. Why hop? You can't run on one leg. At least this way I can still, I don't know, roll fast or something. Yeah, that's good, right? My awkward attempt to look on the bright side seems appreciated, but not really effective. Emi shrugs again. It's just kind of a nuisance. I mean, mean, we can't even meet up on the roof now. No wheelchair access. Yeah, but that's not a big deal, right? I mean, we can still eat together, and that's the important thing. That lopsided grin again. It hurts to look at. I suppose so, yeah. But like I said, it's a nuisance. I mean, I haven't really used a wheelchair in, she thinks for a minute, maybe 7 years? Something like that, anyway. A long time. I'm afraid I'm a bit out of practice. Well, fortunately, it's only temporary, right? Emmy nods. Oh yeah, of course. It's not like I lost him permanently. But it's a pain in the ass all the same. I nod sympathetically. There's not much else I can do, after all. What am I gonna do? Say I told you so? Although I did tell her to get that leg looked at. But by the time I noticed it, it was too late anyway. Do you need help with anything? That is, can I help you with anything? Emmy shakes her head. There's a bit of her usual grin back. Nah, I can manage fine by myself. Although if you want to help me over to my bed, it would save me the trouble of rolling over there myself. I blush in spite of myself. Emmy giggles. Oh no, where's this going? You're such a prude, Hisao. I'm not a prude, I just wouldn't want to take advantage of a young woman such as yourself. It's ungentlemanly. I wheel Emmy's chair to the bed, easily scoop her up, and deposit her there. She quickly sorts herself out and sits on the side. She's actually a little heavier than she looks. It would be rude of me to observe this aloud, of course. Man, you're kind of heavy. Smack. Emmy hits me with a pillow. Ass. Just saying is all. Must be all that running. At the mention of running, Emmy's grin falters slightly. Heh. Well, I guess I won't have to worry about that for a bit, huh? Maybe I'll lose some weight. That's what you do to lose weight, right? Cease physical activity? I'm pretty sure that's what the nurse would recommend. Speaking of which, are you going to still be showing up in the mornings? I'd hate to run a low— Ah, shit. Emmy's sudden interjection, more disquieted murmuring than anything too profane, causes me to look over in shock. She's leaning forward, trying to cover the fact that she's crying by covering her eyes with a hand. Of course, the subdued sobbing makes it pretty obvious that she's crying. Hey, I'm sorry. Forget that I said anything, okay? I place a hand gingerly around her and then pull her close. I can think of nothing else to say or do. How do you comfort someone who's just lost their legs again? Emmy wraps me in a hug and stays that way for a while. Sorry. I'm pretty bad at this whole comforting thing, I guess. Don't say that. I'm fine, really. Her voice is slightly muffled by my chest. I pat her head reassuringly. That's the spirit, right? You'll get through this fine. I know it. Besides, I'm here to help you, remember? Emmy lifts her head and stares at me with tear-stained eyes. Can you? Can you really? She's grinning lopsidedly and something sparkles in her gaze. I can't tell if I'm being mocked or not. Of course, I mean, you're a bit heavy, but... My witty comment is cut off by the sudden press of Emmy's lips on mine. I'm caught off guard and am rewarded by hitting my head on the wall behind her bed. Ow. Emmy pulls back, trying to look concerned, rather than like she's about to laugh. Are you okay? Sorry. I rub my head ruefully and grin back at her. Caught me off guard there. Is that going to become a habit? Am I going to be lectured by Shizune and Misha more? At the mention of the duo, Emmy giggles. Honestly, those two. If I didn't know why, I'd be utterly confused as to why she hangs around with someone so bossy. Which one are we talking about? You know exactly which one, Hisao. Misha's hardly bossy. So what's the reason, then? Huh? The reason why Misha hangs around Shizune. Emmy waves my question off with a smile. No idea. I see. Anyway, you seem to be forgetting the original question, don't you? Oh yeah, I guess I am. You wouldn't mind giving a guy a little warning, would you? Otherwise I'm liable to wind up with a concussion. I emphasize the point by rubbing at the back of my head. Emmy giggles madly. You could wear a helmet. Some kids here do, you know. Or I could just take revenge? I grab a pillow from beside me and whack Emmy over the head. Emmy topples off the bed and lands on the floor with a thump. Her arms promptly reappear on the bed and she manages to pull herself back up. She really has a surprising amount of strength in that little body. Her face is turned downwards and away from mine, making me think I might have accidentally hurt her. Emmy, are you okay? You didn't hit your... A hand shoots up and grabs my collar. She pulls me in with a sharp tug, her face now barely an inch away from mine, and she grins cheekily. Emmy? He gives me a sharp headbutt, our foreheads making quite a loud thud. I sit back and rub my now sore head as Emmy smirks victoriously. How's that for revenge? No fair. You can't take revenge for revenge. For someone missing most of her legs, Emmy's surprisingly agile. I swipe at her, but she deftly rolls out of the way and lands a hit with her pillow. Of course, the odds are against her. I can stand up for starters. Oof. Oh my god! Okay, that's being censored. Skipping. Oh my god! I need to use your window. My first instinct is to hide, but then I realize that I'm still utterly exhausted and sitting next to a topless Emmy, so there's no running away. Rin's eyes pass over Emmy and me and focus on the window. There was a cloud. A cloud? Rin nods. I was watching it from my window, but it didn't stay in my window. So I need to use your window. Emmy shifts a little, causing me to cough in order to cover up a giggle of my own. How long do you need the window for? We're, busy? This time I can't contain my laughter. Rin ignores both Emmy and me and peers out the window. Her shoulders slump and she looks disappointed. It changed into something else. Disappointing. Emmy is having trouble keeping a straight face. Sorry to hear that, Rin. Can we have a little privacy now, please? Rin shrugs, as if to say, can you? And hooks her foot around the door, pulling it closed behind her. We both dissolve into raucous laughter, unable to deal with Rin's bizarrely timed visit any other way. After our laughter dies down, I look at Emmy. We're both a total mess. Well. Emmy raises an eyebrow. Well? Again? Emmy grins and laughs, and then she nods. We should probably ditch the clothes this time. Skip! The sunlight breaks through my window shortly before my alarm ruins the morning silence. I feel sore. The events of the previous evening suddenly intrude upon my consciousness and I find myself blushing. That was an eventful evening, and it explains perfectly the soreness in my lower back. The walk back, as I recall, had been rather tense. My trousers having been soiled, I had washed them off in the bathroom before going back to my room. But there was still a fairly obvious-looking stain on the fronts. Fortunately for me, the only person I ran into on my way back was Kenji, and he didn't notice a thing. Well, apart from my being in the general vicinity. Of course, he'd asked how the night went and whether or not I'd learned anything of importance. I don't even know if I opened my mouth to answer. I was too tired to care. And this morning, I'll admit that I'm feeling pretty worn out. Still, Emmy had promised to meet me at the track, and I'd hate to disappoint. She is indeed waiting for me when I arrive, doing her best to look cheery despite the fact that she's sitting in a wheelchair. I wave to her and begin stretching. You're early. Emmy frowns and shakes her head. Ridiculous. You're late. Overslept, Hisao? All tuckered out? Well, at least she seems more like her old self. And as expected, she doesn't seem shy about mentioning our previous activities. Hey, you're lucky I could show up at all. All that cardiovascular activity last night, I nearly thought I'd have to see the nurse afterwards. Emmy laughs out loud. Then her face suddenly becomes concerned. Hey, that's not, I mean, you're not... Go on, spit it out. It's just that it would be hard to explain if you had an episode while we were... Oh. Oh. Now that she mentions it, it really is a legitimate concern. I certainly hadn't thought of it last night, of course. Other, more pressing concerns had been at hand. Well, I don't think anything we, do is gonna be any more of a strain than these morning runs, and I can handle these fine, so... Emmy considers this point. Oh no, cursed. A devious light appears in her eyes. Say, The light vanishes and Emmy grins ruefully at me. I can't help but feel vaguely suspicious. I seem to have forgotten a pair of gloves. What do you need gloves for? Emmy indicates the chair upon which she is seated. For this, of course. Sure, regular moving around is all well and good without him, but I want to be able to get a good workout. And to get that kind of speed, you gotta have gloves if you don't want blisters. So what, are you wussing out on me then? Do I have to go it alone? Emmy thinks for a minute, or pretends to think. If I remember right, there's a spare pair or two in the track shed. She does seriously want to do it, then. But in her normal school uniform, I'd have expected her to wear her gym outfit for something like this. Wait, what are they doing there? Emmy looks askance at me. Seriously, you can't think of why a shed full of track supplies at a school for the disabled would have racing gloves? Well, when she puts it that way, I suppose that makes perfect sense. Hey, I'm still getting used to this place. Give me a break, huh? I guess I can let it slide this time. Now come on, I need your help. I can't imagine what for, but then again, I didn't have a clue why racing gloves would be in the shed, so I'm not willing to press the issue. Emmy navigates her way to the shed easily enough, though I can hear her grumbling under her breath. It's actually kinda cute. I hurry a little to reach the door first. Opening it will be easier for me than for her. The door opens and Emmy starts to wheel inside, only to come to a sudden halt at the doorway. It seems the door still is slightly too high for her to get over by herself. She makes a few runs at it, unsuccessfully, before crossing her eyes and glaring at the offending object. Stupid wheelchair. Isao, can you give me a hand here? Sure, no problem. It's a simple enough matter for me to bump Emmy over the doorway, jostling her slightly. Hey, easy there. Whoops, sorry. It's at about this time that I fail to notice where I'm going and run Emmy's chair into a mat. She gives a startled yelp and topples forward out of her chair. There's a moment of silence as I gaze in horror upon what I've done, and Emmy glares at me. Isao. Yes? Promise me you'll never work at a hospital. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Emmy giggles and holds up a hand. Would you kindly help me back into my chair, Isao? As I bend down to pick up Emmy, she grins in triumph and pulls me into a kiss that quickly has us both entirely unconcerned about getting her back into the chair. In fact, as I move to a more comfortable position, I convince that the chair is pushed out the door, which, startled by the passage, swings shut. Not again! Okay, so they were making out on the floor of the track team supply closet. And then Hisao rolled onto something uncomfortable. So he checks to see what the object he landed on is. I reach under my back and pull the offending object out, inspecting it closely. Personal lubricant lemon flavored? Wait, what? Emmy's eyes shoot upwards and she begins, if possible, to laugh even harder. Somehow I don't think this isn't track related. Oh man, I know whose that is. What? It's the track captain's. Ah, my old nemesis, or kind of. How do you know it's his? It appears that I've asked a stupid question, or at least Emmy thinks so. Because he's the one who told me that the track shed was a good place for, what did he call them? Clandestine encounters? Oh, did he invite you to one or something? Emmy bursts into more laughter. I confess that the sight of a naked Emmy laughing is oddly beautiful. I feel an eagerness to end the conversation and get back to what we were doing, despite my rather pointed questioning. Hisao, the track captain, is gay. Huh? Really? And here I initially thought you two were a couple. Well, I did have a crush on him when I first joined up, but he wasn't interested. Obviously. But we are good friends, I guess. I mean, he told me about all this, you know. I hesitate to ask. And I really do, but I ask anyway. But what does he need the, lube for, anyway? I mean, he doesn't, How the hell does Emmy always manage to not blush? It takes some time, but finally we're both more or less clothed. There's a frantic moment where neither of us knows where Emmy's wheelchair is, but I recall it going out the door and rescue it. Now be more careful going through the door this time, would you? Bumps are not my friend right now. I am so sorry we tried this. Emmy shrugs and grins. Well, it was worth a shot, right? And anyway, it was good exercise, right? Can't argue that. As we make our way to the nurse's office, I notice that Emmy keeps shifting uncomfortably in her seat. God, this feels weird. Good thing I'm in a wheelchair, Hisao. Why is that? Because now I don't have to explain to the nurse why I'm walking funny? Oh, we're never doing this again. The nurse is at least kind enough to not comment on the marks Emmy left on my shoulders. Nor does he say a word about Emmy's constant shifting about in her wheelchair. Either he didn't notice or he simply didn't want to notice. All the same, I'm gonna have to make sure he didn't slip cyanide into my medication for a little while, just to be safe. I shower for longer than usual just to be sure I'm clean, and then collapse on my bed. Class is in 20 minutes, so I can probably afford a nap. Who's there? That's not how the joke goes at all. I already said who's there. More importantly, what time is it? Even more importantly, what day? I am suddenly catapulted into wakefulness by both the fact that the knocking still hasn't stopped and the fact that it's noon on a school day. Now, fully awake, I can remember why I was napping. Better not give that excuse to Muto. Sorry I wasn't in class, I was experimenting sexually with my girlfriend and it tired me out. Yeah, that'll go over well. I wonder how long this knocking is gonna continue. I guess I ought to answer the door. I'm strangely surprised to see Kenji on the other side. Though it appears that Kenji is surprised to see me. What the hell are you doing here, man? Well, I was sleeping. Kenji nods in understanding. Knocked out, I see. I told you to be careful around that Ibarazaki chick, man. This is the sort of thing that happens when you aren't cautious. He makes an attempt to look at the back of my head. Did she hit you with something? Or was it a drug? Stop trying to touch me? Kenji produces a flashlight and shines it in my eyes. You got a concussion? I wasn't knocked out. Maybe you just don't remember. This conversation isn't going anywhere. No, I just had a tiring morning and fell asleep. Whatever, man. If you want to be in denial about this, I guess I can't stop you. But you gotta watch out for that girl, man. She's not safe. What? She's not safe to be around. She's one of their most sinister agents. If you're not careful, there's no telling what could happen. She's brought down stronger men than you know. What the hell are you talking about? She's not an agent of anything, and she didn't knock me out, okay? I also highly doubt that she's brought down anyone at all. Kenji looks almost offended. I have no idea why. You don't believe me? That's cold, man. Real cold. I'm just trying to look out for you. That's what friends do, you know. We're friends? I had no idea. Then again, I wonder if Kenji knows what being a friend even entails. I feel something like pity for him, standing there before me. Maybe he does think he's looking out for me. I know. I'm sorry about that. Thanks for the warning. I hold out my hand as a sign of peace. Kenji shakes it gingerly, like my hand could possibly be on fire. There's an awkward silence for a few seconds before Kenji remembers that he's still shaking my hand. Anyway, I need a favor. What kind of favor? I'm out of money. No, you aren't. You've got some money kept in your desk drawer under a black notebook for emergencies. Did you ransack my room? That's not important. I don't need money anyway. He adopts a very serious tone. I'm about to undertake a major op. It'll blow the whole conspiracy wide open if I'm right. But it's dangerous, so I need you to do something for me in case I don't come back. Sure, man. Anything. What the hell is he planning on doing? Should I be telling someone about this? If I go missing, wait 3 days and then mail my journal off to the newspapers. It's hidden in my room under a false bottom in one of my desk drawers. How do I get into your room? I don't have a key. Kenji looks at me like I'm crazy. So pick the lock. You know how to do that, right? It's an important skill to learn at a young age. Yeah, of course I know how. I'll be sure to do that for you if you go missing. I don't think I want to read Kenji's journal. Either way, Kenji seems pretty happy that I've agreed to do this thing for him. Great, man. Great. I'll see you around. I got stuff to do. And he's gone, dashing down the hallway. He made it seem so final. I hope I don't have to carry out his final wishes. Shaking my head, I close the door and walk back to my bed. I guess I should go to class, if only to catch the last half of the day. But I've come this far without going to class today, and I did want to read more of that Hawking book Muto lent me. I'm sure he'll understand. This time, the noise jerks my attention away from my book. An experience not unlike being woken up. Who's there? Me, aren't you glad? The voice is muffled through the door, but it's unmistakably Emmy's. I hop up and open the door, smiling broadly. Hey, nice to see you again. Emmy grins back, staring up at me from her wheelchair. Yeah, you would have seen me earlier, but the damned elevator wasn't working. I had to wait for them to fix it. You'd think they could keep it in better order, but no. I chuckle a bit at her vexed expression and invite her in. She wheels in easily, and with my help she hops onto my bed. There, much more comfortable than that stupid chair. A sigh of contentment hangs in the air, and for a minute we both just stare at one another. It's at that point that I notice the circles under Emmy's eyes. They're not that dark, but they definitely weren't there before. Before I can ask about them, Emmy fixes me with a mischievous stare. So I couldn't help but notice you weren't at lunch today. In fact, I don't think I saw you at all. What happened, huh? I fell asleep. I actually didn't wake up until lunch, and only then because Kenji woke me up. What had you so tired, Strenuous workout in the morning, slightly uncomfortable too. Emmy coughs, a half-laughing, half-embarrassed noise. Remind me not to do that again. No problem, it wasn't exactly great for me either, to be honest. We'll just avoid that from now on. Are you, still sore? Emmy stares at me in disbelief. What? It's a legitimate question. Of all the questions I never thought I'd be asked, that's one of them. Well, I didn't ever expect to have to ask it, so we're even. Emmy laughs at this. I guess so, huh? Well, since you asked, yes, I'm still a little sore. We're never doing that again. No arguments from here. A yawn escapes her, and I raise an eyebrow. Tired? Emmy nods sleepily. Haven't slept well. Not sleeping well. I can tell that she didn't mean to tell me this either, because she gives a little start like she's been caught lying and hastens to add. It's not a big deal, though. What's the trouble? Emmy shrugs and refuses to elaborate. Stressed over exams? Another shrug, but after a pause, Emmy nods hesitantly. Yeah, I guess. Actually, that's why I stopped by. She begins to look more and more miserable. Not so you'd notice, of course, but her eyes are on her lap. She's fidgeting and her voice is quiet. We need to stop hanging out so much. Huh? Why? Emmy takes a deep breath like she's been practicing this. Because you're too much fun to be around, and I can't concentrate when you're near me. With exams coming up soon, I just can't have that distraction. Otherwise my grades will be pretty lousy, I'm afraid. I could help you study. She smiles at me, clearly unhappy with the situation. I'd love it if you could, but we wouldn't actually study, would we? I mean, even now I'm trying to have a conversation with you, but I kinda just want to, not converse. Ah. Overwhelmed by my rugged manliness, I understand. That earns me a grin, at least. Emmy shakes her head. Idiot, you're so full of yourself. Well, I am pretty irresistible. More or less, I guess. So that's the situation, Hisao. I have too much fun around you, and if I'm going to go into exams prepared, I need to be alone. Hey, that's okay. It really seems to have been bothering her. Besides, it's only a couple of weeks, and we'll still see each other in the mornings and at lunch. We could just hang out at school, no problem. And after exams, we'll go on a date to celebrate their being over, okay? Emmy grins, pleased by the proposal. Yeah, sure, that sounds great. As if to signal the end of the conversation, she leans in and kisses me. The rest of the night is not spent worrying about exams. Katawa Shoujo.